NC State men's basketball's run to an ACC championship and a Final Four was both unlikely and unexpected. But do people think it was a fluke?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $150 if you sign up and win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Thursday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, as we all know, NC State men's basketball's run to an ACC championship and Final Four is something that legitimately zero people saw coming, maybe outside of Kevin Keats and everyone else in the locker room. So as we're continuing to move toward this basketball offseason, we're still looking forward to any additional news to come out of the transfer portal. You're also going to begin to see way too early ACC basketball power rankings. That's exactly what I spotted from Isaac Trotter of 247 Sports. He posted his way too early ACC basketball power ranking, and I was honestly surprised to see where NC State landed on this list. Now, I'll be totally transparent here. I didn't really expect top three, maybe, somewhere around 4 to 5, I would think, to read NC State's name. NC State was at 10 after everything they just pulled off in the postseason. So that leads me to this question. Do people think that this run was an absolute fluke?
No, people don't believe in the NC State brand. It's not just about believing that the run was a fluke. It's about not believing in Keats, not believing in his philosophy, not believing in the talent that's gathered at all. Let's make one thing very clear. Who's the number one team on that power ranking, Grayson?
It's Duke.
Now, last time I checked, they're one of the worst teams in the league in terms of returning production, correct?
That would be correct.
Now, they're counting on true freshmen to not only be good right away, those true freshmen are going to have to carry the load throughout the season. This is not a situation where they have a bunch of guys where it's like, oh, man, we've got guy after guy after guy after guy that these freshmen aren't coming in and expected to lead. These freshmen are just going to come in and be a guy amongst a bunch of other dudes. They're replacing so much of their roster via the portal and those two in recruiting. I think it's flatly audacious to say they're going to be the best in the conference. And then behind them, again, you have a team in a very similar position with the Dirty Foot Club where, don't get me wrong, you're bringing back the ACC Player of the Year. Outside of that, not a ton. So the worst and most egregious to me is Louisville being as high as they are, because it's like, what have they done? I get it. I know that y'all think Kenny Payne was the only thing that stunk around there. And don't get me wrong, Kenny Payne was a terrible coach, a terrible head coach. I will absolutely get that. Louisville at 4, NC State at 10 feels insane. Feels absolutely insane. But hey, I love the way too earlys. I love the disrespect. In the words of Kendrick Lamar, I love it when you count me out. Let's do it.
For context, I'll read you the entire top 10. But yes, you have Duke at 1, Dirty Foot Club at 2, Miami at 3, Louisville 4, Wake Forest at 5. I'm also raising my eyebrows there. Clemson at 6, Pitt at 7, Virginia at 8, Syracuse at 9, and then NC State at 10. Louisville at 4 is shocking to me. And I know Pat Kelsey is a first-year head coach. He's a really good head coach, and I do expect him to eventually turn Louisville probably completely around because they couldn't obviously get much worse than they were. But they're bringing in so many pieces that you truly have no idea what it's going to look like. You have no idea how they're going to gel once November rolls around. So Louisville feels extremely ambitious to be putting at 4 there. Wake Forest is another one. I'm not sure where all of this belief in Steve Forbes is coming from. Another guy that routinely does pretty well in the portal, and then the season starts and they completely fall apart. What would give you the indication that that's simply just not going to happen again this year? So Louisville at 4 and Wake Forest at 5 is really concerning to me. If I were the one making this list, I think I probably would have had NC State around the 5 level. They obviously have a decent amount of production coming back. We're losing a lot in both DJs, Casey Morsell and Mo. I'm already excited at the 2 Louisville transfers we're bringing in. You're bringing in Dontrez Styles from Georgetown, who was a good player on a bad team. I'm wondering if that's how folks are kind of packaging NC State's transfer portal offseason. I mean, it's a top 15 portal class, but folks are wondering, well, they're picking players off of teams that had horrible seasons, so I think we're pretty underwhelmed here. I'd hit the brakes on that before you get too far down the tracks, because we pulled talented players with a lot of in-conference experience, players that are averaging double figures in the ACC. If that immediately translates over to NC State, we're going to have a solid year.
I look at what you said about Forbes and some of these other coaches that are on the list above Keats, and people say, well, this coach had injury problems last year, and Forbes has some extenuating. I think it's so interesting how it's. And I say the same thing about Tibbs in the NBA. People look at patterns, things that happen repetitively, and we try to say, well, that was just the 5th one off in a row. I'm going to tell you something, right? I'm not saying that Keats is going to rattle off the greatest coaching career that we've ever seen from an ACC coach. I'm not saying that. But what I will say is this. For him to be given less grace in the idea that he can put together a team that is successful from the portal, then Louisville's head coach is insane to me, because he has done so. You look at 2 years ago, that team doesn't make the tournament without Jarkel Joyner. That team doesn't make the tournament without DJ Burns 2 years ago. You look at last year, again, that team does not do what they do without Jaden Taylor and MOC. They just don't. And so I think it's foolish. I think it's nonsense. I think it's honestly a little bit downright deceit and clickbait to even say such a thing, that, hey, that team is 10 behind, again, a bunch of coaches that have never proven they can get it done at the highest level, or coaches who are brand new and haven't proven jack diddly yet. It's absolutely, it's just a sin and a sham.
Yeah, a lot of these lists are clickbait, and we fully understand that. But what I'm most interested in is how people are viewing State coming off of this run going into next year, what the perception is. And so, I mean, again, this is only one list, but this list would tell me there's not a whole lot of faith that Keats can replicate in some sense what he just did and experience more postseason success. In a way, that's shocking to me. Obviously, the regular season would, that tells a different story, but that postseason run, it was unbelievable, but it wasn't a fluke. A rudderless ship has no shot of pulling off what they pulled off. They didn't really get bracket luck, if you want to point that way. I mean, you had to run through the premier teams in the ACC. Then you get to the NCAA tournament. The only real bracket luck you could possibly consider is facing Oakland for a chance to go to the Sweet 16. But Oakland was more or less one of the Cinderellas of the tournament. I think Oakland really could have played with just about anyone. So I wouldn't even call that bracket luck. You run through Marquette, you run through Duke a second time, and you make it all the way to the Final Four. That's not a fluke. That doesn't just happen to anyone. That was a product of the team suddenly formulating everything they tried to throughout the entire course of the season, and it all just clicked at the right time. Kevin Keats needs a lot of credit for that, because, again, we've heard a lot about the team's mindset entering the ACC tournament, and they came there to win. The time was now. Forget the regular season. All they have is what's ahead of them. And then look where they ended up. That's not a fluke. So I am very interested in see how the rest of the country really perceives NC State basketball moving out through the rest of this offseason. I want to see what people really think they're capable of after another year of Keats going into the portal and reconstructing a roster.
For sure. I mean, he's done a good job through the portal, I believe, again, but we're going to see what the country believes he did in the portal.
Coming up next, we're taking a closer look behind some of the numbers in NIL, possibly providing a little bit more transparency after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data that you need in one simple location. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. You can securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. Providing a comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and that's exactly what Yahoo Finance ensures, that you have the right insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, and that's yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. Middle portion of our Thursday show, wanted to take some time to talk about some NIL numbers inside college football. And this has been a really hot topic amongst NIL because it is so widely debated. You see the gaudy numbers of players asking for when they're in the portal, and it's kind of hard to decipher what's real and what's not. So I found an article from John Talty of CBS Sports, and I really appreciated the transparency in here. It also gives you a look kind of behind the curtain, all the finances that a football program has to consider in the offseason, all the numbers flying left and right, players to consider, what they can and cannot pull off financially. It's a lot more than people may realize. So I want to roll down the list here positionally on what the average range is for some of these players in the portal. For quarterbacks, the quarterback market, according to this article, is $500 to $800K. I do believe that Grayson McCall is a quarterback that falls in that range, as is probably several other quarterbacks in the P4 level. To think about, just yesterday, we mentioned Jaden Rashada, who's now at Georgia, somehow conjured up a $13 million deal. How in the world does that happen?
Well, he said he got a recording of Billy on signing day too. So, yeesh, that's going to get ugly. And I'm talking about Elephant Man ugly.
I believe Cam Ward down at Miami is another quarterback with an M attached to him. So some of these numbers, they can get a bit out of control. But
well, yes, but I mean, that's how averages work, right? Like the average NBA player isn't making $40 million a year, but LeBron and Steph Curry are. You get what I'm saying? Like there's always going to be somebody or somebodies that push that average far beyond what it is. And that's kind of what you're looking at here in terms of, again, this is very simply, there are some outliers. There will always be outliers. But again, Grayson and I are here delivering the average of pay.
Next up is the running back market, and this says it's between $200 and $300K. Now, that seems a little bit low, but I think that also kind of follows a trend in the NFL. The overall value of the running back has kind of gone down in the last, maybe 4 or 5 years. Does this number range surprise you here for running backs?
Let me ask you a question, Grayson. Who won the Heisman last year?
That'd be Jaden Daniels, quarterback at LSU.
Okay. And who won the Doak Walker Award?
Is it Ollie Gordon?
Correct. It was Ollie Gordon. But do you see how there was more hesitancy with Ollie Gordon than it was Jaden Daniels?
I did have to think about it for a second.
The reality is simple. They're not the same household names. And even the drop-off from a Jaden Daniels to a Penix to a Nix to a McCarthy is I'm wrong for throwing McCarthy in there. I'm sorry, y'all. But that's less than the drop-off between Ollie Gordon and some of those top backs, the top 1 or 2 backs, and then the guys behind them. So all in all, the reality is, again, this is not about the high-end guys. This is about the average. And on average, you should expect to see less guys end up in situations where they're going to be making millions at the running back position because, again, it's not a premium in today's game, and there are not enough premium players to drive the average up at the moment.
Next up is the wide receivers. Their market sits between $75 to $300K. Now, obviously, I don't have the exact number for Casey Concepcion, but he would very clearly belong somewhere in this range, if not higher, with the amount of contribution he had on NC State's team last year. Kenton, how does this range sound to you for wide receivers?
Who won the Biletnikoff last year, Grayson?
That was Marv Harrison. Maserati Marv.
Maserati Marv won it, but guess what? Again, when that drop-off hits between him and the other receivers, It's something crazy. And again, that last year's receiver class was very good at the top in terms of Maserati Marva, Dunzy, and company. They were really, really good at the top end of things. And yet and still, we're not like, was it does Malik Neighbors generate this kind of money? It's just not. And again, I would say Malik Neighbors is a huge part of why Daniels won the Heisman, but there were multiple receivers to go in the first round. There were multiple guys who got a lot of attention out of LSU in that receiving core. You cannot pay that position the same amount that you pay your quarterback because, again, you just have more of them that are good if you're a good team. I talk a lot about NC State's receiving core right now. Think about in 3 to 4 years if you had to pay these guys $800,000 to $1 million each in terms of KC, Noah Rogers, Juice Vereen, Jonathan Paylor. If you had to pay all of these guys, Wesley Grimes, if you had to pay all of these guys $1 million, look what just happened to that 20 mil or whatever that the NCAA is going to be sending your way. It's gone in a heartbeat. So, again, there's just more of these guys. They're more talented, so it makes sense that number is going to be lower.
And I'll group these next two together. It's the offensive line and defensive line. The O-line is ranging between $350 to $500K. The D-line is ranging between $250 and $600K. Now, with numbers that can get up that high, that would shed a little bit more light. Kenton's doing some stretching. He's got to find some eligibility.
I got to find some eligibility. Call compliance right now. I got to get out there. I still got something left. I got one more in me, in the words of Vince Carter.
But it helps to shed a little bit more light on why NC State was a little bit slower to add those final finishing touches to their roster, because these guys, these big guys up front, they're being heavily coveted with the amount of value in the portal. Some of them are holding out for a payday. I mean, that's very explainable with numbers like these, because when you're looking for that quality depth, you can basically drive the price tag up on yourself. And some of these guys were doing exactly that. But some pretty gaudy numbers for some pretty gaudy linemen.
As Uncle Baby Billy and Righteous Gemstones would say, there will be a payday. Oh, a payday, what a payday. Because the buffet busters are getting paid, and I love to see it because, I mean, objectively, the big guys lead. When your big guys are good, you're going to be a good team, and that's what we've seen historically, so I'm glad that they're getting paid.
And then these last two are linebackers and DBs. Linebackers range between $100 to $300K. DBs are $120 to $225. So again, maybe some more additional light on why NC State did not go after a linebacker in the portal and decided that we're good on that. We got linebackers at home, as maybe your mom once said in the grocery store. So Kenton, after reading off all these position groups, what would you say is the position group that surprised you the most with their range?
Linebackers feels low. Linebackers feels really low. It just does, but I mean, hey, more power to them, man. Again, all these guys are making money that I could have only imagined, I could have only dreamed of. And by the way, I don't want to see anybody in the comments saying if you give it 18 to 22, you're out that much money. Shut up. People who are in their 30s and 40s file for bankruptcy all the time. So looks like age isn't that determining of a factor into whether or not you're going to do right by your money. I hope that these young men have financial advisors to help them take care of this and be good shepherds of these figures that are rolling in. But more power to them. They put their bodies on the line. They generate the money. They generate the revenue. None of this money is possible if they don't do what they do. So they deserve it. More power to them. That's all I got to say about it.
It's that last part. It also connects to what we talked about yesterday. With all of these dollar signs flying around now in college sports, it's imperative that people are paying attention to where all this is going, or else you fall into extremely slippery slopes and players holding out, trying to drive up their value, basically asking to be bought instead of committing to a place that will amplify their strength in actual football and academic reasoning. We all know that's going to sort of go by the wayside when dollar signs like these are out to play. So it's a lot more to consider when you're looking at how NC State is positioning themselves to reconstruct a roster from year to year. And I have to imagine that some of these numbers may fluctuate from year to year as well. If you have 1 year where you have a ton of extremely talented quarterbacks, perhaps that price tag will go up, maybe even goes down, depending on how many are in there. But this offseason kind of seemed like a real first look at a total free agency feel to college football. And we've talked a lot about the ongoing professionalization of college sports. When you see numbers like this and players going to where they can sometimes get the biggest bag, it just furthers that point. So a little bit of transparency for some of these numbers that fly around by position group. Tell us what surprised you the most in our comments. Tell us what position group shocked you when I read these numbers off, and where do you think NC State can continue to flourish in doing so later on down the road? Coming up next, we're rounding out our Thursday show, talking about the big showdown with Duke baseball tonight with a trip to the semifinals on the line after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home big wins of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and NC State to take home the ACC baseball championship. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Last couple minutes of our Thursday show. Big time ball game for Pac-9 baseball tonight in Charlotte. It is a trip to the ACC semifinals is on the line, and we got to face Duke yet again. Now, obviously, we took 2 of 3 from Duke back in, I believe it was early March. That was kind of the beginning of this hot streak for NC State baseball. Although we won this series, and very deservedly so, I do think we'd be a little bit naive to not recognize that Duke kind of crumbled in that series. They more or less had game 2 won before we came all the way back, and Eli Serrano hit a walk-off home run in game 2. So Duke by no means has forgotten about that game. I would almost guarantee you that. They're hungry for some get back on NC State, and they're hungry to make it to the ACC semis. They have a very deep pitching staff. They have explosive offense, and they're going to be coming to NC State tonight with a vengeance.
I don't care about none of that. We owe them some get back. For those of you who don't remember, Elliott Avent was supposed to win his first ACC championship. Our bats performed like a Tom Thibodeau coach team in the second round of the playoffs. Everything just went straight downhill. And so we owe them the get back. It is not, we are the one who knocks here, okay? We're not the person who gets to knock on the door. No. No, we're not the person who gets got back right now. We owe them get back. Elliott Avent, it's your time to shine, brother. Go out there and get your first ACC championship. Let me tell you something. It's never too late. It's never too late. I don't care how many years you've been here. Go beat up on those Devils and go. It's time. It's time. Go get it, fellas.
Before Kevin Keats and the gang just erased NC State stuff, that 1-0 loss in the 2021 ACC championship game to Duke, that ranked very high on my NC State stuff list. I was completely heartbroken that we were not able to win that one, but you're right. We owe them the get back. We're back in Charlotte, and we owe them something from the last time we saw them down there. So it's a big-time matchup. Again, I would anticipate that State will probably roll with Sam Highfill on the mound because, again, this is a must-win game. If NC State loses this game, they're done. They're out of the pool because Duke at that point would be 2-0. So there's no tiebreaker to fall back on. There's no technicalities to find a loophole in. You either win this game or you're out of the ACC championship. And that speaks to a bigger point of NC State trying to be a regional host in the NCAA tournament. Now, there was a lot of discourse surrounding how hard NC State should put effort into playing VT on Wednesday night. But that's all out the window for Duke. It is pedal to the metal. But not just that. If you're trying to be a top 8 national seed, again, this is a game that you got to go out and have. NC State should probably look to make it to the final, if not win the whole thing, if they want to be really considered for a top 8 seed. And if NC State can land that top 8 seed, a path to Omaha becomes very real. Like very real. Your chances shoot up significantly if you can land a top 8 seed. So humongous game with a lot of implications tonight in Charlotte, 7 p.m. Duke against NC State. We got to keep these bats hot. We got to keep the arms consistent on the mound. Lockdown defense. Got to have this one.
Lay it on them thick. Lay it on them thick.
That'll do it for us here on Thursday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments down in the comment box. Tell us what you think about NC State basketball potentially already being doubted for next year. Way too early. Some folks are already sliding them down on the power rankings. Tell us what you thought about the NIL transparent numbers. A look behind the curtain and what some of these athletes are being paid. and tell us what you think about NC State baseball's chances tonight against Duke for a trip to the ACC semifinals. If you're going to be at the game in Charlotte, let us know. Maybe you'll run into us. I don't know. Maybe I'll be there. Maybe I won't be there. If you see me there, okay, I will be there. If you see me there, give me a shout. Big time game. Can't miss it. Looking forward to seeing Wolfpack Nation lighting Charlotte red on Thursday night. Let's go get us a dub. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and we will see you all tomorrow. But until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.